procrastinator in his own right, Michael Haney, who is also a writer and an executive director of editorial at Esquire. So they'll be in conversation and take questions after, and we're really excited to tackle this topic because all of us as creative procrastinators probably find it challenging and inspiring at times, and yeah, we'll dive deep into where to take inspiration from. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. He's the author. I'm the interviewer. I'm Michael Andrews. Thanks everyone for coming.
There was a great deal of debate. There was a great deal of debate earlier about who would sit in which seat. So if any of you feel like we should switch it at this point, maybe.
I'm going to interrupt you because you're procrastinating.
Okay.
So we're going to get right to this. So Andrew, I want to just jump into it because we got a lot.
Oh, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Before we do that, thank you to everyone at NeueHouse for having us. That's it. And also welcome to the representatives of the New York City High School baseball community.
You guys don't joke here. So the book is called Sue, and I know the answer to this, but I'm just sort of more curious. Why did you want to write about procrastination?
Well, so I'd say my motivation was entirely self-interest. So I'm a lifelong procrastinator, and procrastinators in the audience, you will know that a certain amount of shame goes along with that habit. We've been made to feel really bad about doing what we do, or I guess I should say not doing what we don't do. And so I thought it would be helpful to kind of dive into the history and the psychology behind procrastination, and to see if I could find some ways to excuse my habit, justify my habit, or if nothing else, to get some insight into it.
So, but I also want to be, I think it's important because everyone says I'm procrastinating, so clearly I think, let's define the terms. What do we mean when we say we're procrastinating?
Okay, so yeah, so we use the term sort of every day colloquially. We just use it to mean any kind of delay, usually. But I think technically, and more precisely, procrastination has to involve, putting off a task that you think is going to be onerous in some way, and it has to involve putting it off knowing that the delay is going to come back to bite you in the end, and there's nowhere worse to be bitten than in the end. And and
I can laugh.
okay. So there has to be some knowledge that you're delaying at your own risk.
Right, which is different than, say, I'm just killing time if I take a break. But this is sort of goes back to grammar school, right?
If I have some good reason not to do something, if I have a good reason to put something off, that's not procrastination, that's just intelligent time management or efficient strategizing or something that is not procrastination.
So, human psychology, if we know it's bad for us, right? Why do we still do it? I like to do it because it makes me feel good.
So, yeah, Mark Twain said, all generalizations are false, including this one. So, my false generalization about procrastination is that it usually grows out of an effort to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, and it's usually a self-defeating effort. But that's the genesis of it. So maybe we're afraid of a task, or we're anxious about a task, and so our procrastination becomes a way to shield ourselves from that anxiety or that fear. There's also another kind of defensive tactic is stall tactic. We don't want to make up our minds, or we can't make up our minds, so we just postpone making up our minds. It's like a four corners of behavioral psychology. Just dropping a completely obsolete 1980s college basketball reference.
Can you be more than one of those things?
One of what things?
The sort of, you identified a couple of those different reasons why we do it, right? In the psychology, does it get out of the psychology of it, because I feel like one of the things that I love so much about the book is sort of very concrete and very, I think, lively and entertaining examples from the history of creative, intelligent people who have worked through this, Darwin and other people, and sort of benefited from procrastination. So before that, but I'd like to just I was wondering if you would just take a minute and read, just because I think the voice of the book is so entertaining and enlightening as well.
Okay, yeah, I'd be glad to, but I wanna talk about some of those great procrastinators too, so, okay. Let me see if I can do this without hurting myself. So I'm going to read from pretty early on in the book, when I'm just sort of beginning to explain what it is I'm up to. I don't recall exactly when it occurred to me to write a book about procrastination, but I do know that for a long time after I had the idea, I did nothing about it. I made the mistake a lot of procrastinators make. I told my friends about my idea. They encouraged me. They told me they couldn't wait to read the book. This was the worst possible thing they could have said. They meant well. They meant well, but what they didn't understand was that their encouragement only made it less likely that I would ever get around to actually writing the book. It wasn't that I doubted the book was worth writing, just the opposite. The more enthusiastic I got about the book, the more difficult, the more impossible writing became. I'm the kind of procrastinator who puts off longest that which most urgently needs to be done. So when I might have been working on my book about procrastination, I was instead alphabetizing my collection of LPs, or painting a radiator, or watching YouTube videos of someone else's dog barking at a tablespoon. I was vacuuming the stairs, or shopping online for Clyde Frazier's basketball shoes. I was sweeping the kitchen floor unnecessarily. I was eating every last scrap of cheese in our refrigerator, or trying, without success, to repair a dripping faucet. There were even moments when, and this is my deepest, darkest shame, there were even moments when I listened to sports talk radio. When you go around telling people that you are at work on a book about procrastination, you learn just how common this kind of task avoidance is. They can't wait to tell you about their favorite ways to put off what they should be doing. Everyone procrastinates. One told me that he found an analog for his habit in the natural world. A bird faced with a rival and unsure whether he should fight or flee will often do neither. Instead, the bird will peck at the ground. So for birds too, life is a matter of finding something, anything to do, other than the thing you can't bring yourself to do. One more page turn. Procrastination is generally considered indefensible. In history and literature, procrastinators have always been portrayed as weak, wasteful, contemptible. We are always under suspicion. Even committed procrastinators can be deeply uncomfortable with the idea of not doing something, which is probably why our foot dragging is sometimes called killing time. This is an idiom that makes murderers of procrastinators. The language of crime and transgression comes up a lot when people talk about procrastination. The 18th century poet Edward Young called it the thief of time. The 19th century essayist Thomas de Quincey, whose Confessions of an English Opium Eater pioneered the addiction memoir as a genre and established him as a pretty unassailable expert on transgression, called procrastination that most odious of vices. He spoke from experience. De Quincey was the sort of procrastinator who, when editors wrote him with offers to publish whatever he produced, would never get around to writing back, even though he was desperate for funds. What is it about writing that demands deferral? I like to think that no one can understand the mind of the procrastinator quite like a writer who has risked everything, career, success, the inviolable deadline, to wait until the last possible moment to begin work. When Dorothy Parker was asked why she was so late turning in a draft, she explained somebody else was using the pencil. It's true that I know other writers who are not procrastinators, who are eager to achieve certain milestones by a certain age, to be considered not just successful, but successful while still prodigiously young. My sympathies, though, are with the procrastinator, the late bloomer, the delayer. This book then is the product of a life spent postponing what I was supposed to be doing. This is the book I've spent my whole life not writing. That's pretty much the whole book. Yeah, could I just ask if you could just follow up on the idea of the great procrastinators, which is kind of, because you started by asking about my motivation. Excuse me, about my motivation for getting into this topic, and the first thing I found when I started digging into it was these sort of case studies from history of people like Leonardo, like Darwin. So they're guys who obviously enormously accomplished, but upon closer inspection, they're operating with the same anxieties and the same inefficiencies that ordinary people like you and I are. Well, I would not push Edward. There's nothing ordinary about him, but the same kinds of things that
So my parole officers.
the same kinds of things that you and I do. And so I found that, well, first of all, enormously comforting, but also instructive, because it showed me, I guess. So maybe there were a few takeaways from that. First is that digging into the history, you find out that procrastination's history is really long. Like, as I think I said in the book, right? As long as there's been jobs to do, people make big on doing it. The second is that spending some time researching that history and studying it is itself a really good way to avoid doing other things that you don't want to do. And then the third thing is that you find out that there are a lot of paths to success. There's not necessarily one right way. And that what might seem like a detour or an inefficiency, we learn from studying someone like, Darwin or by looking at Leonardo's life story. We find out.
Let's get for a second, because I think like Darwin is super concrete. And why did, because it's a great story, and it's one of my favorite stories in the book, is, the lesson of Darwin. We all think that he just was working on, the theory of evolution forever, but I think it's a fascinating piece of the story that you've uncovered in the history of procrastination, and sort of the takeaway for us, which is, I think, as you call this, fruitful detour, right?
Yeah. And also, Darwin is my favorite procrastinator, just because he's just, and I think a lot of people that love Darwin and are interested in his work, I think they might object to me calling him a procrastinator, but for me that's not an indictment. One of the things I love about him is his humanity. He's just like a really quirky father and family guy, and when you get to know his life story, you see all these very understandable and relatable characteristics that bring him down from like some Olympian height to a more relatable status. But anyway, so yeah, Darwin's story. So he goes around the world on the HMS Beagle, and what he sees there gets him thinking about how species have come to be, they've come to be, and he starts writing when he returns to London. He starts writing his notebook, and by 1838, he's got in his notebooks the kernel at the heart of natural selection. And he must have known how earth-shattering, world-changing this stuff was. And he must have known that, you would think this would be priority number one, yeah?
We're going to get this out there.
Let's get it out there, man. But he did something kind of interesting. He didn't do anything with this information. He typed in his notebook. I think he shared it with one or two of his friends. He left instructions with his wife not to publish any of this stuff until after he was dead. And he went on to other things. He edited a gardening magazine.
This would be the fruitful detour.
I would say so. So he got really interested in earthworms. So like this talk about like his quirky humanity. So he was fascinated by earthworms, and for us, that's, to me anyway, that seems like an odd for a great mind to be interested in. But he used to bring the worms into the house, and like he'd set them up on the piano and have his kids play on the piano because he was interested in how the sound waves would affect the worms. So and he got interested in barnacles. Was another obsession. these little sea creatures. And his obsession was such that the house was filled with jars of pickled barnacles everywhere. You know, for him to dissect and examine and try to understand the minute variations of one barnacle species to another. And it was such an obsession, and he did it for so long, for so many years, that his kids grew up thinking like that this was perfectly normal. The story is that one of the kids one of the Darwin kids went over to visit a friend at the friend's house, and he looked around and said, well, where does your father do his barnacles? So I mean, you get a sense for how obsessed Darwin was with these seemingly odd pursuits.
So just to interrupt you,
Yeah.
this 1838, you said he's got the basic outline of the theory of evolution. And how long is this barnacle, earthworm, little fun time lasting?
About 20 years. So sometime.
And he's not writing at this point.
Well, he's writing other things. He's publishing prolifically about things about what we might call smaller scale things. He's working in very narrow channels. He's not working on the great book that you might expect him to be working on. Not yet, anyway. It's not until sometime around like the mid 1850s that he finds out that another naturalist, Wallace, is thinking along the same lines that was thinking about back in the 1830s. And he starts to realize that his delay might have been a mistake, and that if he waits any longer, Wallace will publish on natural selection.
The kick in the ass he gets by realizing someone could beat him to this. Benefit of what he started to do.
Right. So here's the thing. So you think, well, maybe he was, he was distraught when the stuff with Wallace was going down, and when it seemed that he might lose priority. He was distraught about it. He wrote to one of his friends. Significant change. That's what natural selection is all about. So I mean, you could make the case that what seems like a detour, what seems like a waste of his time, ended up informing what became his master work.
But the other thing that's interesting to me when I listen to you talk about Darwin, and I think for many of us who suffer procrastination or believe we do, we end up sort of flagellating ourselves and beating ourselves up for it.
Metaphorically.
Right.
Yes.
And yet, Darwin, it seems to be a very happy guy. It was just sort of, right, so he didn't outthink himself or overthink. He just was like, I got this idea, and now I'm going to pursue this other thing. And so maybe that's one bit of sort of inspiration from him.
Yeah, I mean, that's why.
Trust yourself, right?
One of the charming things about Darwin is the way he went about his work, and the way he involved his family in his work, and the way his house was. I mean, the reason he lived where he lived was he picked that place because of the soil composition really appealed to him. He thought he could do some really cool work with soil composition and earthworms there. I mean, like most of us, we pick our house based on how many bathrooms it has or something, or the view maybe, but not it. For him, it was all about the calciferous soil.
So I want to then jump to Da Vinci, which I was astounded to realize in your book and learn in your book that this guy who you think is the most prolific polymath mind ever, and he's the poster man of that, and seems that there was never a moment when he wasn't creating, so how could he possibly have been a procrastinator? But, and I think he seems to be, you identify him as benefiting from distractions.
So, I think of him, obviously he's another Olympian intellect, and like you said, incredible accomplishments, but to his contemporaries, he was kind of a joke. He was the guy who could never get things done, he could never finish anything. And Michelangelo...
The half-finished sketches all.
Michelangelo was constantly needling, and they were kind of rivals. Well, not kind of. He was constantly needling him about his inability to finish things. And when I read about these things, I immediately think of Leonardo as like he was the distracted freelancer of his time. And I mean, I don't know if I know these people. I am these people. And so
there'll be a group hug there.
An order of priests in Milan asked Leonardo to paint to do a painting for an altarpiece in a church in Milan. And he said, yeah, no problem. I can have that for you. I think he promised it in 6 months. And he delivered it 25 years later. And I love that, like, as a freelancer, I love this sort of completely diluted confidence in his ability to get something done quickly. And what's different about Leonardo's case, though, is that, his distraction came from his relentless and really broad intellectual curiosity. So, he was going from portrait painting to engineering projects to anatomical studies. And whenever he would start one thing, something else would come up that would draw his intellectual curiosity. So one of his wealthy patrons might want him to do a portrait. And he would agree to do it, and he would start doing it. But then he would get interested in some anatomical question, and he would drop the portrait. And the patron's like, Leonardo, finish my portrait, man. And so again, he's a guy who you think, well, he's wasting his time. He's not doing what he promised to do. But again, in his case, what seems like a detour, what seems like an inefficiency ends up being, well, all right, so his most famous portrait, probably anyone's most famous portrait, the Mona Lisa, its enigmatic smile. Biographers make the case that that enigmatic smile is a product of the research that Leonardo was doing on facial musculature and the smile and the muscles that form the smile. So maybe those distractions, those detours, again, as in Darwin's case, they kind of ended up informing great work of his.
Right. And listening to you, it seems Darwin is the guy who's distracting himself with a deep dive into something he's obsessed with, which is, as you said, that minute changes, and then yet Da Vinci seems to distract himself broadly, right? He goes, he's that freelancer right now who's got 42 piles of things around the room, and I'm working on this project, and then you sort of like, almost an ADD sort of guy.
Yeah, I would go along with that sort of read. That makes sense to me. I think what they both have in common, though, is that they didn't feel the need, or maybe they couldn't do their thing efficiently in what we would maybe in our modern thinking would seem like an efficient path.
When you bring up that's to me is when I talk about we beat ourselves up, and you just use the word efficiency, which I think is we live in this world and we work in this world where it's like gotta be efficient, gotta have time management, the Marie Kondo world, and everything's got their little books. And so another thing that I really love in the book is this cult of efficiency that we sort of all have somehow been drafted into, and I think it's a Taylorism.
So right. Yeah.
Talk about that, because I think when I talk about a support group for people who feel they're procrastinators, I think this, to me, allays some of my guilt about procrastination.
Well, so Frederick Winslow Taylor, that's who you're talking about, was kind of like a proto management consultant. He went around to factories.
When did he live?
He was working the late 1800s, early 1900s. Went around to factories like the Watertown Arsenal in Massachusetts, which manufactured big coastal defense cables. And he started his work at Midvale Steel in Pennsylvania. And what he did was he would go into the shop and with a stopwatch and with a scale, and he would measure everything that the workmen, well, they were workmen at the time, everything the workmen were doing. He wanted to eliminate any variation, so that the workers who were shoveling sand in the steel factory, they might, one sand shoveler might have been using a different size sand shovel and might have been picking up different loads of sand with his shovel, and he might be shoveling more shovel loads of sand than the other sand shoveler. And this was all a terrible thing to Taylor. He wanted to standardize it and make sure every sand shoveler was doing the same work at the same pace so that we could understand what our goals were. Right. He also wanted to take it out of the hands. He wanted to take any decision making and any agency out of the hands of the workers, because I think his term was they were mentally sluggish. And so he wanted to not let them have any agency of work. And so his ideas, scientific management, he called it became hugely influential. The assembly line that Ford eventually developed would have never been developed without Taylor's and its foundation. Japan, Japanese companies like Mitsubishi.
It's all about efficiency.
Totally adopted Taylor's. The Weimar Republic in Germany made a national, did implement rationalization on a national scale based on Taylor's ideas. Probably the most influential management figure ever.
Right. Anyone who's ever worked in an office and had consultants come in, you were being basically taunted by this guy.
The thing that's amazing to me is that, like, so this stuff, he developed these ideas to standardize, well, like I was saying, things like shoveling sand. But I think what's happened is that these ideas have trickled down from management school and business schools into sort of our general ideas about self-improvement, so that we're trying to order our lives and improve our lives based on these 19th century management ideas that were designed for a munitions factory that was making siege cannons. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And that's how we get things like, that's how we get this urge to do everything faster, better, whatever the phrase is. And I think it's misguided. It fails to recognize human agency and human variation.
I mean, so is there a way to push back against that? Is there anyone that's? I mean, it's fascinating because, like, we do all labor under, and that task should only take 2 days, and yet I still feel like I'm shoveling sand to go back to Taylor. It's fascinating. That's one of the hidden gems of the book again, is that this 21st century world we're living in, and it's almost like our lizard brains of efficiency are still being programmed by Taylor, right?
Right. I mean, that's one of the cases I try to make. I mean, I'm not against efficiency, and I'm not against meeting deadlines as a writer. That's part of my job, and it's part of what I take pride in. But I guess what I'm pushing back against is the sort of fetishizing of it, and making efficiency the overarching goal.
So that's probably a great segue to pushing back. And so probably what everyone here, and you a very popular man, if you could tell us, how do we stop procrastinating?
Well, the first thing, I mean, I'd say you have to be sure that you need to, because it's not necessarily so that you need to stop. I think some people do need to stop, and some don't. What I would say is stop thinking about your procrastination in terms of self-improvement. The problem with self-improvement is that it's all about self. And procrastination is one of those habits that it has an economic context, and it has a social context, and there are ethical implications to it. So when I feel like my procrastination is getting out of hand and needs to be brought back into check, I think about it as an ethical problem. Is my procrastination creating problems for my editor, for my coworkers, for the people who come in contact with me? Is my procrastination making me let my family down in some way, or making life miserable for my family? These are all sorts of the relationship questions, ethical context questions, And I think in my experience, when I look at my procrastination through that lens and think about the ethical implications, then I give myself, then I feel like I have some foundation for making the needed adjustments to my behavior.
You're making this up.
Let me just say, that's in opposition to just saying, I gotta fix my procrastination because I'll never write that novel I need to write. I don't really, I mean, if that's the only reason for you to stop procrastinating, that's not a good enough reason. Because nobody cares.
I think that one of the distinguishing things you're telling me is like, it's not black or white, right? It's not all or nothing. You know, you're gonna stop procrastinating tomorrow,
right?
And you know, it's like people when it's January now, right? I'm gonna lose 50 pounds. Right. You know, we tend to make it this again that Taylorism thing. It's an all or nothing. I've got to just redo the whole, you know, shop of who I am.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is right. It's January and right resolutions. I think before I started looking into procrastination, I thought of it when I did think of it as a failure of will. But I think in a lot of cases, certainly in my case, it's less of a failure of will or a lack of resolve than it is a failure of like self-knowledge or a failure of like knowing whether your goals are good goals. So I think one of the reasons we fail to keep our New Year's resolutions is that our New Year's resolutions are stupid.
So here's an important question. I think for people here, you're working with colleagues, you're working with other individuals and contractors. So you've answered how I can stop procrastinating. But how do I deal with someone who is in my life, who is procrastinating, who's messing up my life?
Well, so you're a magazine editor.
Dealing with freelancers.
Yeah. So have you heard the story?
I have a personal interest in this.
Have you heard the Douglas Adams story?
Sorry?
Douglas Adams, the writer, Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Yes.
Galaxy. You heard the story about him? He had a book due, and his publisher was waiting. He was notoriously late with his manuscripts, and his editor finally got him and locked him in his hotel suite for 2 weeks until he finished the manuscript that Adams owed. Well, Adams, the quote that you'll find online from Adams is a classic. You've probably seen it. He said, "I love deadlines. I love the sound they make when they go whooshing by." But so I'm guessing you've never locked a writer into a hotel suite. I think that's probably like against the code of ethics. Yeah.
But I do think, I mean, it's funny you mentioned quotes. I mean, to me, part of the procrastination, it reminds me a little bit of what's the old Woody Allen joke, which is my brother-in-law thinks he's a chicken, you know, and the shrink says, well, why don't you tell me he's not a chicken? He's like, well, we need the eggs too. Right? There's sometimes where the procrastination is beneficial, and you have to deal with someone's. That's just the way they work, right?
Writers are like a really bizarrely special case because I think they have this idea that the deadline is sacred on the one hand. On the other hand, they take this perverse pride in blowing deadlines off, like Adams did, and you know there's all this sort of romanticization of the writers, like we talk about like the writer's block, which is like no other vocation. You never talk about the accountant's block, or your car mechanic would never say, I'll get before I can do that oil change. I need to take a soulful walk on the beach and think about it a little bit.
What if they were a pilot's block? Like, I just can't fly the plane right now.
Right. So, for some reason, writers are able to get away with that in a way that is mind-boggling, and yet they're supposed to be attentive to the deadline.
I'm just curious here. I want to. Before we get to questions, which we're going to get to, but who here, there's probably two kinds of procrastinators, and it probably goes back to being in school. Who here needed the pressure of the last minute? Like you'd wait till the last minute to get focused.
Still didn't do it. Yeah.
Still didn't do it, right?
So do you feel like, what I hear a lot, when people ask you what you're working on and you tell them I'm working on writing about procrastination, you hear a lot of procrastination stories. And I heard so many people tell me, I do my best work under pressure. I need to wait till the last minute. And nothing angers. I will I will tell you nothing angers a procrastination researcher. Like I said, like a psychologist, nothing angers them more than hearing that, because the studies show that that's a myth. But it's fine with me. But yeah, like you remember the Sunday night feeling,
The Sunday night dreads, they go back to being in school when you had to do your homework.
So I'd be back in Chicago in November, and I'd be watching the late football game from the West Coast. It'd be like 5:30, and the promos for 60 minutes would start to come on TV. And that's when that was the sign for my.
It was the ticking of the clock.
And my stomach, I would get sick to my stomach. Not because I didn't like 60 minutes, but because I would realize
Their life is ending.
that was the cue for me to know that all that homework that I was supposed to have done had done by now. I didn't have a chance to get it finished. I still, the thing is, I still feel that way occasionally. I think we never really stopped having homework. It's just that we stopped calling it homework, and maybe if we're lucky, people start paying us to do it. But I still have that feeling about my work and my deadlines.
Do you have a procrastination horror story that anyone has told you? I mean, or maybe we're going to get one when we go to the questions.
I'm one of those procrastinators who's always been able to manage his habit, and
You're perfect.
So I can get away with it. But I don't have stories from real life, but I have awful dreams about being caught without my work done, and awful dreams about not being ready for an exam.
So this is the other thing, when you do feel that way, and this is important help for all of you, there is in fact a saint of procrastinators that you can maybe pray to for relief, which is another insane piece of knowledge that you deliver in the book. So is there this patron saint of procrastination actually exists?
Well, yes and no. I grew up Catholic and thought I knew every saint there was to know, but there was one that I didn't know about until I started researching procrastination. His name was Saint Expedite, and he's supposed to have lived in like 3rd or 4th century Armenia. He was a Roman soldier, and one day, let's see if I can get the story right. One day he decided that he was going to convert to Christianity, but before he could, this is the really good part. Before he could, he was visited by a talking crow. And the talking crow said, Expedite, why don't you just hold off? There's no rush. No need to rush into anything. Think about it before you commit to converting. And Expedite realized that the crow was really the devil in crow form. And so he did what any resolute Roman soldier would do. He stomped the crow to death. So today, when you see statues of St. Expedite, and I've gone and visited some of them, he's always displayed in his toga, stepping on a crow, and the crow is on his back, breathing his last. And there's a banner usually in the crow's beak that says CRA, C-R-A-S, which is the root word for procrastination, tomorrow. The victorious Expedite is holding a banner that says Hodie, Latin for today. So he's the emblem among believers he's the emblem for getting the job done quickly and converting before it's too late. So, but you asked whether it's pretty well agreed by anyone who cares about this kind of thing that he never existed. He existed only in legend, which makes sense because when you think about it, like no actual human being would be that resolute. Most of us actual humans would dither and delay and hedge our bets before doing anything decisive. Only a legend can be that decisive.
Which seems like a perfect segue into the support group we have gathered here tonight in search of people who want to come forward and say, hello, my name is Brooke, I'm a procrastinator.
If any of you want to go meet St. Expedite, there's a really cool kind of shrine to him. I don't know if I call it a shrine exactly. There's a statue of him in the oldest church in New Orleans. Mike and I went to visit it a couple years ago.
You didn't want to go, you kept procrastinating, and I said, if you don't go and do this, you're not going to write the book. So I actually made him buy a plane ticket and take him down to New Orleans.
Mike's a really good friend, so we went down to New Orleans together, and I went, but I didn't actually talk to anyone down there. So
He didn't do the reporting, and he had to go back to Canada.
So I went back a second time. This is what life as a procrastinator is like. It's not pretty.
I said, you're down here to do this thing with it. He's like, yeah, well, but anyway, I do want to see if anyone has any questions or horror stories about procrastinating that they need to confess to the group. So if you do, I'd be happy to anyone any
Questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, sir. You over here.
Who do you want?
Who do I want?
You can begin, Coach. Thank you.
Well, Michael referred to, when he was talking about, I believe, Darwin, saying that Darwin suffered procrastination. And I was thinking that when you were speaking, it didn't sound like procrastinators suffer, that it's actually leads you to some good if you're patient enough to work through it. So do you think procrastinators do suffer, or do you think that's just they take the roundabout path?
Okay. I think some procrastinators suffer. I think there are procrastinators who, for whom the problem is a real problem, and it's no laughing matter. I mean, I have a lot of fun with it in the book, but procrastination can be a problem for people related to depression, related to anxiety, related to all kinds of disorders. So I don't want to make too much light. That said, I don't think we need to pathologize it as much as we do, and or we don't need to pathologize every instance of it. And I think that's harmful, and I think that creates a lot of the shame that we feel about procrastinating. Not every habit is a disorder, and not every habit is a pathology. So I think it would be more useful for us if we stop thinking about our procrastination necessarily as a disorder. Sometimes it can be just an inefficient and odd and a quirky way to get things done.
Is there another question?
There was one.
Yes, sir.
Right out there. No? Okay.
Oh, me. But I think there was someone above.
No, it's all on you right now.
We'll work our way up there.
Hi. I have many personal horror stories of procrastination, but I won't subject them to you now. I do have a question, Andrew. How did you embark upon your research? Did you have a particular in?
I went and tried to find every psychologist, behavioral economist, historian, philosopher who would talk to me, and I tried to talk to them. I met a guy in Chicago named Joe Ferrari, who was a really great psychologist with an even greater name. And he works at DePaul. He's probably published, no, not probably, he has published more academic papers on procrastination than anyone else. He's an academic psychologist. And his take on procrastination is that he's interested in it as an example of what they call self-handicapping. So self-handicapping is when we create an obstacle or a barrier to our own success. Well, you would say, why would I want to do that? So we create these obstacles as a way to protect ourselves and our sense of our own sort of ego and our sense of competence. So that if I have a presentation to make at a fancy co-working space in Lower Manhattan, and I want to impress all these important people, I might feel that I need to handicap myself and party all afternoon with my friends. This is all hypothetical, and get wasted, so that I make it very difficult to succeed in my presentation. That way, if I fail, as I secretly suspect I will, I have an excuse for my future failure. It's not that I'm an idiot, it's not that I'm incompetent, it's that I didn't try, it's that I was out getting wasted. So, or conversely, if I do happen to succeed, it makes my future even greater because I did it with one hand behind my back, I was wasted, and I still did really well. So, I mean, it actually self-handicapping emerged as a term related to understanding substance abuse, but it can be applied to procrastination too. So, anyway, to get back to your question, those are the kinds of people I spend a lot of time talking to and reading their academic papers, and tremendously. One of the things that's amazing about procrastination is how many people spend so much of their time working on it. It's like a whole industry of people who make it their life's work to study people who can't seem to do what they're supposed to be doing. and it's across so many different academic fields.
We had another question up top I want to get to.
Hi, thanks for being here tonight. Thank you. Is there a evolutionary reason why we as a human species even have the ability to procrastinate? I mean, are there other species out there that procrastinate, and what's going on in our brains?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a psychologist in Canada who has written about procrastination from an evolutionary behavior perspective. I can try to summarize her ideas, but I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong. But basically, if I'm remembering right, it has to do with the idea that in the depths of history, when we couldn't expect to live very long, it wouldn't make sense to make long-range plans and to. I feel I'm getting her work. I'm mangling her work. But if you did a journal search for this researcher's work, yeah, you'd find there's people who address exactly what you're talking about.
It's almost, if I'm just getting, if I'm listening to what you're saying, it's like it seems that there would be the third path from fight or flight to just sit there and do nothing.
Right.
And so it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna wait and see the crowd. They have the crowd run past, and then I'll see what happens.
Well, that's like the bird in the book. Right. I mean, I feel that bird. I mean, that's a lot of my life is not knowing what to do or not being able to make up my mind which to do. And so I do a lot of metaphorical pecking at the mouth like the bird.
Are there any other questions? Yes, right here.
Thanks, Andrew. Really interesting conversation. And Mike, there's a couple of things you mentioned that made me think about Darwin. He had this thinking path that he used to meander along.
Yes, yeah.
And it wasn't called a procrastination path. It was a thinking path.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, in terms of the verb, if any of the conversations you've had, you encountered discussions around should there be another verb that would be used to define people like Da Vinci or Darwin or people in the creative fields that are actually just thinking and delaying to try and refine their thinking versus people in the more functional area, which is delaying a tax return, preparing for exams that we've all done.
Yeah, no, you've made a couple of really interesting points I want to follow up on. One is, so in terms of what we call those different kinds of behavior, yeah, I mean, going back to how we define procrastination, so that if I feel like my delay or my wandering, if I feel like that's a useful and productive part of my routine or my work, well, then that's not procrastination by definition. Procrastination has to involve there being some sense that some knowledge that the behavior is going to be counterproductive. So you're right, there does need to be another term for that. There are other terms for it, I think. But the other thing I wanted to comment on was the walking path that you referred to. One of the, if people ever get a chance to go visit Darwin's house in Kent, it's a really moving place to see, because there's so many ways you can see his life and his work manifest themselves in the landscape there. I mean, I walked that path that he liked to walk, and the idea is that he I think one of the gardeners there at the house told me whenever he was faced with a problem that he was having trouble resolving, he would walk, and he walked a lot. So I mean, his life must have been one big problem. But I mean, he took a morning walk, and then he would walk again in the afternoon. He was a very regimented schedule, and he always walked the same way. I think it was counterclockwise. I had to check, but he always walked the same way around the path. To be at that house, birthplace of so many like mind-blowing ideas, is a really incredible thing. So yeah, thank you.
I did have one other element to that, which is just in terms of the relationship to technology and procrastination. When we get caught in, let's say, a browser fatigue, diving in, and as we all do, is that damaging to the act of procrastination? or is it actually exacerbating it?
Yeah, I think the sort of conventional understanding is that, if I'm getting your question right, the conventional understanding is that, yeah, wow, we're inundated with this flood of information now, so God, procrastination's gotten worse. Well, I mean, I think it is easier to be distracted than it maybe used to be, and there's certainly more ways to be distracted. But I mean, one of the things you learn by diving into the history, as I did, is that, you know, the problem, the act of procrastinating long predates any sort of information technology. So I don't think it's fair for us to blame it entirely on the technology that we live with. I think that might be just a convenient way of shifting the blame away from ourselves. Again, I'm using the term blame, but the fact is, if I want to put something off, if I want to procrastinate, I will find a way to do it, whether or not I have access to Twitter or not, or whether I can have, check out. For me, it's videos of cute dogs. I can use entire work days looking at corgis. And I think I have.
I want to be sure, is there any, we're going to have to wrap up soon. Are there any additional questions that are before we wrap? Or if not, do not put off buying the book. Joke I'll make tonight. The book is for sale here. It's a gift. Andrew, what else can we talk